person that was shot? My mom and my dad. Your mom and dad?
August 20th, 1989. Parents Jose and Kitty Menendez murdered in their Beverly Hills home.
I can't believe this.
He was planning to take his family fishing on deep sea fishing on Saturday.
The focus became very clear on these two sons.
Their two sons, brothers Erik and Lyle, convicted of the crime. But interest in the case spanning more than a quarter century. What happened that night and behind the family's closed doors, igniting intrigue and a quarrel over criminal justice.
Finally, they're starting to talk about the truth.
You need to pay attention to your kids.
Decades later, changing attitudes, changing culture, and changing pop culture.
It is so crazy to see this house in person.
You were so, grief-stricken on that call.
My hope is that they're released.
Sparking a resurgence, the rise of true crime and social media, amplifying calls for the brothers' release. Tonight, a turning point.
The brothers' first parole hearings in San Diego. Their fight to get out of prison seeing its best chance yet. NBC4 is following every moment, every step of the way.
This is The Case.
Thank you so much for being with us for this special edition of The Case. I'm Michael Brownlee.
And I'm Colleen Williams. After years of waiting and a change in state law, we are still waiting right now on a decision tonight from the parole hearing for Lyle Menendez. It's been 12 hours so far today.
That's right. We're joined here by our Conan Nolan and our legal analyst, Royal Oaks. We also have Erik Leonard standing by in our newsroom and Robert Kovacic inside of the correctional facility in San Diego County.
We're going to start right now with Robert. He's really been a central part of our coverage over the years, from sitting down with relatives of the Menendez family and other key players, including a rare interview with Lyle Menendez in 2017. Robert is now live outside the correctional facility. Robert, what can you tell us?
Colleen and Michael, you thought last parole hearing was long for Erik Menendez yesterday, as you mentioned, assuming that this parole hearing is still going on because we haven't heard anything, then we are now approaching hour 12. This is Lyle Menendez going remotely in front of the parole board. This is what has been anticipated. His brother would go first yesterday. Then it would be Lyle's turn. Again, remote from the prison behind me. Lyle Menendez speaking to parole commissioners in Los Angeles. And they, of course, would go through everything. And when I say everything, we have broken it down, and both District Attorney Nathan Hochman and Defense Attorney Mark Garagos agree that it really is the 3 R's. Responsibility for the crimes they committed, remorse for the crimes they have committed, and rehabilitation while they have been behind bars. And it apparently was rehabilitation that was the reason why Erik Menendez was not offered parole his first time out, and they said, come back in 3 years and give it a shot. The judge making it very clear yesterday that despite the seriousness of the crimes, we're talking about those that were committed in Beverly Hills when the brothers walked in and murdered their parents with 2 shotguns on August 20th on North Elm Drive. Despite the seriousness of those crimes, he said it was his behavior as a prisoner. That's what did him in, and that's why parole was denied. A number of violations happened in prison while he was behind bars. And again, he said, you were not a model prisoner. So as far as Lyle Menendez is concerned, we can pretty much expect the same blueprint being applied to him today. He will then have to ask and answer questions from the representatives of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, as well as defense attorneys, as well from members of the Parole Board Commission. And those will cover not only the crimes, not only the rehabilitation, but then they will also hear from family members. And this, you got to imagine, is an exhausting process for those almost 24 relatives who have come forward. They have not only, as they said yesterday, we lost 4 people in this tragedy: Kitty, Jose, Lyle, and Erik. These family members asked to do the same thing today, what they did for Erik yesterday. Come forward, many of them in tears, and we assume that they have now done just that. But it was in 2017 when it was Lyle Menendez who spoke with NBC4. The Menendez brothers have made a lot of headlines, as you know, recently with a Netflix series, with the Peacock doc, with changes in the law, as you mentioned. But it was an NBC docudrama in 2017 sort of detailing the Menendez brothers case that brought him to our attention, and we spoke with him extensively. Here is what he had to say about his family and more.
I have a very supportive family. My mother and father's family and sisters, and just a lot of cousins, and so I'm able to call, and we just sort of stay close as a family even from in here, and their support has been very miraculous, very forgiving, and just really tremendous.
Is it something that you still think about every day, the day of the murders, or is it something that you try to put behind you?
I don't try to put it behind me. I think it's just a part of, who my brother and I are, everything that's happened to us. I've learned it's unhealthy to sort of try to escape or run from painful memories, and so but at the same time, I don't try to relive them every day.
If you're wondering, will Lyle Menendez have the same fate as his brother when it comes to being granted parole? The two things we can tell you: we don't know if he has the same number of violations that his brother sort of accrued while he was behind bars. Again, that was sort of the crux of the matter yesterday. And we do know that, according to defense attorney Mark Garagos telling us before the hearings, the brothers will go before separate parole boards. The parole board showing no mercy yesterday with Erik, Michael, and Colleen, as we have discussed, coming down pretty hard on Erik yesterday. So we wait now to learn the fate of Lyle Menendez. But again, Mark Garagos pointing out before this hearing, and something that NBC4 has been pointing out to our viewers all along, these two have been linked together from the very beginning in 1989. Lyle and Erik tried and convicted together. This is the first time, as Mark Garagos says, they're going to go this alone, and they will either stand or fall on their own. And now we wait to learn Lyle Menendez's fate. For now, we are live outside of the prison here in San Diego. We apparently are approaching again hour 12. We'll keep you updated as soon as we hear something.
All right, Robert Kovacic, they're live for us in San Diego County.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll get back to Robert as soon as we hear anything. But before we bring in our Conan Nolan and our legal expert, Royal Oakes, we have a little insight from the L.A. County DA, Nathan Hochman.
Yeah, earlier, live on the NBC4 News at 7, we spoke to Nathan Hochman about what he's hearing. Here's some of that.
There have been some procedural issues that the parole board commissioners have been working through. They want to make sure that they get all the evidence in before they make their ruling. They've been doing it diligently all day, so they have not concluded that. When they do, most likely, if they're going to rule today, they'll take some additional time to confer, like they did with Mr. Erik Menendez, and then come back and make a ruling.
Despite the recommendation yesterday in Erik Menendez's case, it's still not over for him. What's next there?
Well, Erik Menendez will have his parole board recommendation reviewed by the governor. He then, if the governor agrees with it, he can basically apply for parole in 3 years' time. So in the meantime, what he'll have to work on is what the parole board commissioners highlighted. What they highlighted is that in the last couple of years, Erik Menendez has violated the prison rules. And the idea is that if you can't go ahead and comply inside the prison with the rules, then they weren't willing to trust him to be outside the prison in an unstructured environment. The other point that we pointed out is that when it comes time to insight into one's criminal actions, that has been an enormously important factor for the governor. And with respect to insight, Erik Menendez has not demonstrated that full insight and completely come clean with his lies, dealing with his self-defense defense at trial. That's the defense that said it wasn't sexual abuse as the justification for killing his parents and murdering them the night of August 20th, 1989. It was that he thought his parents were going to kill him, so he had to kill them first, both his mother and his father. We have shown through a detailed factual analysis that that self-defense defense is a lie. That when they tried to pin a violent rape on Jose Menendez of Lyle Menendez's girlfriend, a lie. When they testified that the mother was trying to poison the family, a lie. And over the last 35 years, they've never come clean with these lies. So these lies, this lack of complete insight into their criminal actions and their illegal conduct, coupled with the violations that Erik Menendez experienced over the last several years, is why the parole board denied him parole now. If he finally comes clean, if he basically, abides by the prison rules, and hopefully in 3 years, he'll present a different package to the parole board. And at that time, the DA's office will also reassess whether or not we agree with parole or want to oppose it.
Mr. Hochman is... Okay, we're just getting breaking news right now, and this is reportable, right? Lyle Menendez has been denied parole, just like his brother, last evening. We're going to bring in Conan and Royal Oaks on this. Royal, got to ask you, any surprise on this?
Not a shock at all. I think the district attorney kind of summarized probably what the commissioners are saying. You just walk through it in a pretty simple timeline way. This is the older brother who came up with the plan of killing the parents and influenced the younger brother to do it. This is the older brother who literally on the night of the murder said to Erik, look, you're going to have to shoot first because otherwise you might chicken out. And then they blamed it on the mafia. Then when the psychologist blew the whistle on him, they said, okay, we did it because of abuse. And then they try to obtain perjury from 2 different girlfriends. And then they violate the rules in prison. And a psychologist for the board says these guys are at risk of violent behavior. So I would say it is really not a shock that he has been denied parole.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Conan.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you imagine Lyle being let out and Erik not? No, I mean, that based on what you just said and what we all know about this case, that would be unheard of, frankly. So it would be interesting to see the deliberations here. We will hear later on. But I can't imagine, once we saw what happened yesterday, it was a foregone conclusion that this was going to happen today.
Yeah, of course, word just coming out that Lyle Menendez has been denied parole. Let's get back to NBC4's Robert Kowalski. He's live down in San Diego County there in front of the correctional facility. Robert, late word just coming in.
Hi, guys. I'm doing exactly what we did yesterday. I am sending you the parole report so you guys can all go forward together. What is interesting here is that, according to the parole commissioner, unlike what we heard with Erik, and I'm quoting here, she says this to Lyle, we find your remorse is genuine. In many ways, you look like you've been a model inmate. You have been a model inmate in many ways who has demonstrated the potential for change. But despite all these outward positives, we see you still struggle with antisocial personality traits like deception, minimization, and rule breaking that lie beneath that positive surface. Just to flag my producers in NBC yesterday so I can explain to you what happened. We now have a photo of Lyle Menendez that we're going to share to you. The photo of Erik was taken first thing in the morning as the parole hearing started yesterday. That photo was leaked. Apparently, the California prison system was very upset and said, we're not going to release the photo of Lyle, which we're going to get for you on our screen in just a second, until this parole hearing is over. Colleen and Michael, I'm going to have you, as I talk to our viewers for a second, go through what I just sent you so you can pull these highlights. But I want to talk to you all about what we heard from Lyle today. And give me a second. I'm going to pull these up on my computer. And these are, Lyle, just so you understand, there's some things that we can't tell you right away because we are sort of put under very strict rules and regulations. So if we can, back in Universal City, let's put this up. This is Lyle Menendez. He's crying here. His face is reddened and his voice is strained as he's saying the following. It is the anniversary of a crushing day for so many in my family. I think about all the phone calls on that day with the shattering news and the loss and the grief. He went on to say again, red-faced, crying, voice strained, despite all of this, they are still here, showing up for me, disrupting their lives, dealing with public scrutiny, and I will never deserve it. Now, when it came to the closing remarks from the deputy district attorney, he gives no weight here to the idea that Lyle Menendez and Erik Menendez acted in fear of their lives. and acted in self-defense, acted because of the sexual abuse, and acted in any legitimate way because they believed their parents were going to kill them first. And this quote from Ethan Milius from the LA County District Attorney's Office. When you look at him, Lyle has a long documented history of lies made to avoid the consequences of his own actions. Today, Lyle continues to lie about the central issue in his parents' murders. This is Heidi Rummel. She has been the one player who has taken part in both Erik's hearing and Lyle's parole hearing. Defense attorney Heidi Rummel, Lyle's parole attorney, says, and I'm quoting, let's put this up, Lyle Menendez spent the first 21 years of the life in prison of his home and the rest of his life in prison. The board is going to say you're dangerous because you use cell phones, but there is zero evidence that he used it for criminality, that he used it for violence. He didn't even lie about it. She went on to say that she hopes that we are in a place today that we have a deeper understanding of childhood sexual abuse. But as we go to the remarks, and this has just been released to us from the Poole report, and Michael and Colleen, you all have a chance to take a look at this, and we'll bring you in here. But again, they sort of acknowledge the fact that unlike his brother, there aren't a lot of violations to talk about, that he seems to be a model prisoner. However, they bring up those personality traits. Again, Lyle Menendez denied parole this time out, but like his brother, will be given a shot 3 years later. And as Conan said, it really was hard for a lot of us to believe that one brother could get out and the other could stay in. I just want to bring up that 2017 interview. He was housed at that point in Northern California. He was really adamant when producer Mary Harris and I spoke with him extensively that he be transferred down here from Mule State to Donovan, where his brother was in San Diego, because he said at that point he was worried that Erik was suicidal and that Erik was depressed. He was transferred in 2018. The brothers have been here since, and we now know the brothers will continue to be incarcerated here at least for the next 3 years.
All right, Robert, live for us down at San Diego County. Again, the word just coming down here moments ago that parole has been denied for Lyle Menendez. Colleen?
I'm reading a line here. Robert had talked about 3 years being eligible for parole. Again, this is the photo that was released of Lyle Menendez during all of this today. And I've got to ask, because I'm confused about something, I've got to ask Royal Oaks about this. The commissioner there says she says he will be considered for an administrative review within 1 year, and Lyle could be moved up to a hearing as soon as 18 months. So does that mean he would be eligible for parole within a year and a half? What is that?
No, it just means that if Garagos can establish some special circumstances that would justify accelerating the relief, he's free to go to a court or to the board and argue it. But essentially, what he's getting is the same deal as Erik. You can come back in 3 years, which is a good deal. It could have been 5 or 10 or 15 years. And again, it's so interesting that they focus on deception and rule breaking, because that's the kind of language that the Sigmund Freuds of the world use. The psychologists who spend hours with Erik and Lyle, and their job is to go back to the board and say, this is our honest, objective feeling. We think these guys really are a moderate level risk of committing violent crimes even after they're released. So a lot of psychology is involved here, because, you got a crystal ball. You don't know what the future is. But I think, when you read between the lines, you have to sense that what these commissioners are saying is these are two adults, age 18 and 21. They could have left. Yeah. They could have told the cops. They could have gone to the dad and said, it's been real. We have told 5 of our friends in writing around the country, and you're not going to know their names, what you did. And they're not going to tell anybody unless something happens to us. They didn't do that. They didn't do any of that. What they did was bump off not only the dad, but to make sure they got the $15 million in the estate, the mother as well. That's the allegation against them. And it sounds like the Board of Commissioners is on board with essentially the theory the DA has been expressing.
All right, a lot to get here, a lot to cover. We want to get to NBC4's Hetty Ching. She's live for us in Santa Ana with author Robert Rand of the Menendez murders. Hetty.
Yeah, Michael and Colleen, we are once again talking with Robert Rand. You know why? He's an expert on this case. He personally knows Erik and Lyle very well because he wrote the book, The Menendez Murders. Robert, thank you again for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. Look, we knew going into this morning that Lyle was going to have an uphill battle, a steep uphill battle, knowing that 24 hours prior that Erik was denied parole. I imagine that this outcome does not come as a surprise to you. Yes, no, why? And
No.
were there any surprises to come out of this hearing?
No, the outcome is not a surprise. As we said last night, most inmates are turned down the first time they go before the parole board. However, both brothers were hoping that that wouldn't be true. Unfortunately for them, their lawyers and their family, they have been denied parole. However, they can reapply within 18 months.
So the issue, though, I think we had talked earlier about the surprise being that the cell phones, once again, was a big issue, not only with Erik yesterday, but with Lyle today. Did that come as a surprise to you as well?
No, what was surprising in a way, according to pool reports, was that it sounds like they were pounding on Lyle for quite a long time about cell phone usage. And Lyle testified that he hadn't ever used a cell phone until he got to Dalman in April 2018, where he was reunited with his brother, Erik. And so that's a big issue, and that certainly hurt both brothers.
Yeah, I guess, the question now, looking ahead, how do they overcome this? You said that Erik and Lyle had come into these hearings laser focused. They had one goal, and that was to be granted parole. That didn't happen for Erik. That didn't happen for Lyle. How do they overcome this? And does this take the wind out of their sails, so to speak, moving forward with trying to, appeal the decision?
So it's certainly a setback, but as we said last night, the defense attorneys are going to pivot to the habeas petition, and they're going to pursue any other way they can try to get the brothers out of prison after 35 years of incarceration.
You wrote the book, The Menendez Murders. What is this next chapter for you?
Hard to say. We are releasing a final edition of the book when the brothers are released. I do believe that they will eventually be released. It might be 2 years, it might be 3 years, it might be 4 years. Yeah. But eventually they will get out, I believe. They will not die inside of a California prison.
And that's what they told you a year ago when you spoke to them, correct?
Right.
Okay. And when was the last time that you did speak to Erik and Lyle? Have you heard from any of their family members since these decisions have come down?
No. Basically everybody has gone silent for these 2 days. The brothers and the family members and the attorneys. So we have no new information.
Yeah. Robert Rand, thank you so much again for your insight, your unique perspective, and we'll continue to watch what happens from here. Michael and Colleen, back over to you.
All right, Hetty, thank you. The parole commissioners here, Julie Garland, Patrick Reardon, released a statement this evening. I'm just going to read it to you off the computer here. They seem to be very encouraging when they talked about moving forward with Lyle today. And I'm quoting here, Julie Garland says, "Don't ever not have hope. This denial it's not the end. It's a way for you to spend some time to demonstrate, to practice what you preach about who you are, who you want to be." That's Garland. "We find your remorse is genuine in many ways. You look like you've been a model inmate. You have been a model inmate in many ways who has demonstrated the potential for change."
But despite all of those outward positives we see, you still struggle with antisocial personality traits like deception, minimization, and rule breaking that lie beneath that positive surface.
So we talk about Lyle, and there's been a lot of mention of what he has done, groups he has led, things he's done for other inmates while he's been there. Really the good he's done. That was what we heard about going into this. But it seems that the bad definitely outweighed the good here today.
It's an evaluation by a psychologist that concludes that this fellow really is not being honest. And they have their special ways through multiple hours of interviews. And of course, they can't ignore the track record about, urging the girlfriends to lie about the poisoning and the alleged
But some might argue that was in the past. What he's been doing while he was in prison was wholly good. He wasn't in trouble like his brother.
Exactly.
He had a few infractions, but...
Right. But the fact of the matter is the shrinks have come to the conclusion that he is not being entirely honest. And this has resulted in the determination that he is a risk, a moderate risk of violence. And when you look at the statistics, Colleen, only 1 out of 5 inmates who are designated as a moderate risk of violence are allowed to have parole. And so he fits into this pattern. He had only a 20% chance going in, and he's not getting it now. But again, if in 3 years, after many more hours with them, and after making even more progress toward self-improvement and realization and keeping his nose clean, he may well get paroled in 3 years or even less.
But unlike Erik, he was deemed a model citizen, or model inmate, I should say, by the parole board here. So what more can he do if he's already...
In that short amount of time.
In that short amount of time in which he's already proven that he's a model inmate.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he can make sure he doesn't have any even minor violations, the cell phone and so on. But he can just convince a psychologist that he is actually honest when he's saying he's not going to do anything bad when he gets out.
We should point out that being a model inmate, that's the base standard. Of course, you've got to be a model inmate. Now, I did Patricia Kranwinkle and Leslie Van Houten's parole hearings, Manson family members, and they were incredibly model prisoners.
And they were up for parole, what, 25 times or something like that?
Exactly. And it was just astonishing how great, but based on what they did, it was going to take more than one parole hearing to get them out.
So being a model prisoner is not necessarily...
That's the standard. You better hit that standard.
That's the baseline.
That's a baseline, exactly.
All right.
Erik Leonard in our newsroom right now with the big question, what comes next? Erik.
Right. Well, there's a few issues here. One is just looking through the notes from the hearing today, it's pretty clear that the legal team for Erik and Lyle Menendez may try to mount some kind of a challenge to the decisions from the parole board. They're generally not appealable directly through the parole system, but there may be some other legal avenues to challenge this, especially with some of the drama that happened today with the attorneys objecting to the session being recorded and then some of that audio potentially being released, certainly transcripts being made public. But the two other big issues remain. One is a request for clemency to the governor of California. That seems unlikely, but the governor could make whatever decision he wants to at some point. The third possibility, so you got clemency, you got parole. The third possibility has to do with a legal challenge called a habeas corpus challenge. It's a petition that they filed in 2023 in court in LA. They say they deserve a new trial based on what they say is new evidence never considered before. Had it been considered, there might have been a different outcome during their murder trial. And that lies with a judge. The DA's office responded, objected to that request in the last few weeks. That judge may begin to schedule hearings in the coming weeks. And that might be an opportunity for them to get in front of the court and present what they say is evidence that could change the outcome. Back to you guys.
All right, Erik Leonard live for us in the newsroom. Okay, so again, I want to bring Royal and Kona back in here. Final thoughts here, Royal.
The final thought is I think Mark Geragos is really now going to push for just what Erik Leonard talked about. He's going to say that if the jury that convicted these people had heard about Erik telling his cousin 9 months before the murders, not on the stand trying to escape prison, but 9 months before the murders, I'm a victim of molestation. If they had heard that, they may well have found him not guilty. And so Mark Geragos is going to say, in a few months, Your Honor, we deserve a new trial. And if the judge agrees, then we're going to have a third Menendez trial.
I should point out, it's more likely that Gavin Newsom will host a barbecue for Donald Trump than he will grant clemency in this case. This was a gift to him. 3 years, the next governor, let him deal with it. I think this is one thing off his desk.
One other quick note, the brothers, especially Erik, said, I didn't think I was ever getting out of prison here. That may have led to some of my behavior, and it wasn't that bad. Does that speak to character?
Yeah. Well, I thought so too, though. about the same thing, is that, hey, I'm never getting out. Why don't I have a phone? You know, that kind of thing. I think at some point they could make the argument, if they knew this day was coming back then.
Might have changed things.
Might have changed things.
All right. Gentlemen, appreciate your insight here tonight.
You bet.
And thank you for joining us on this special edition of The Case, Menendez Brothers.
We'll be back with much more on this decision on the NBC4 News at 11.